I'm going to walk through the plan for the merged redcap that will have a repeating NIH mandate form. So hold your questions to the end so we can share this recording. So here I'm going to walk through a few scenarios. So in this first one, this is what the project requested, and they requested to not share most things. They're not sharing biosex, social security number, zip code, and date of birth, and they are sharing COVID test. All of these 5 are the same things in everything, right? We're adding these fields to the form in redcap, so they say, is it a request or is it the NIH response or the NIH mandate? So this was the NIH request. It become a repeating form, so this one would auto be labeled 1. We're going to capture the date that it was entered, and then we'll have a field for an informaticist or someone in the CDC to mark if that's valid or invalid. So currently the NIH is saying basically all the early requests are going to be set to valid. So reporting can then use that to decide if they should show missingness. So then let's say the NIH comes back and the NIH says, no, the only thing you can't share is social security number. You have to share everything else. The project would refill out that form or just change the differences, change it to NIH mandate or that a new term we come up with there. It would auto be logged as 2, it would have a new date, and then we would go in looking at hopefully a document they upload in redcap to show what the NIH said, and then we'd mark that as valid. Then there could be a third round, maybe they get a follow-on grant or they go back to the NIH. So this is a request back. And here they're saying, we don't want to share all 3 of these. We don't even have that information or something. So that gets labeled as a request. It's the third one, and we would probably label that invalid because that's a request. We don't want it to show for reporting probably. And then the NIH could come back with a 4th one. This could happen as many times as examples. Just 4 examples where here the NIH has said finally, okay, you don't have to show a social security number or date of birth. You don't have to share that, but the other 3 you do. Now, I want to point out that we've been told the NIH can come back with 2 and 4, and that could apply to different parts of the data set. It could be that that we weren't collecting, that the project wasn't collecting date of birth early on. So the NIH could say, okay, for the first 20%, you don't need to share date of birth because you don't have that information, but moving forward, you do have to. So there could be different mandates applied to different data, and I'm going to walk through how projects could tell us what's going on there. Okay, so there's going to be a new CDE that's basically which NIH mandate does this data point go by. So there will be a new column in their CSV that will be something like NIH mandate, and then in that they'll put the 1, 2, 3, or 4 to say which CDE list should be applied to this. All right, so now I'm going to walk you through how reporting would show missingness based off which of these they used. So let's just look at the first row to start. So here they've submitted, in this example, COVID test 3 times and zip code 4 times. They did not fill out the new CDE, which here, this isn't what it's called, but I've called it nihCdeException survey. I don't think we've settled on what that is. If they don't give it to us, we would probably assume they're all required, right? Because we don't know what's actually required. That's a business decision. The business could decide, okay, we'll go with the last NIH request or something, or the NIH mandate that was come back. If you did apply these in the first, I put NA because it doesn't make sense to apply, but if you did apply their request, which is currently being done in reporting, it would show 0% missingness because they said they were only going to share COVID test, and they did share COVID test, right? If you applied what the NIH said coming back, they'd have 50% missingness because they did share COVID test and zip code, but they didn't share date of birth and biosex, right? 50%. If you applied their third one, it would be 50% because they did COVID test and actually, no, this would be 0% missing again. Is that, wait, sorry. Nope, it would be 50% because they passed COVID test and zip code, and they said they were going to pass COVID test and biosex, so they only passed half of it. And then in the last one, if you applied it, they would be 33% missing because they did pass COVID test and zip code, but not biosex. So this shows how you could kind of get at missingness. Now, when they start filling it out, here they've said, okay, for all of these rows of data, apply number 2, right? So this is that second one, and this is in green because this is correct. Reporting can say it's 50% missing, which is accurate. If they label it all 4, then we can correctly show the 33% because that's accurate because they've labeled the data. And they can also start to have files that are mixed. They could say, okay, for the first 3 rows, apply the second one, whoops. And then for the last 4 rows, apply number 4. And so there you would say for the first 3 rows, they have 75% missingness because they only passed COVID test, right? And they said they were going to pass COVID test, date of birth, zip code, and biosex. So they're missing 3 out of 4. So they had 75% missingness for those rows. In the last one, they only passed zip code, and they said to apply number 4. So they would have 66% missingness because they were supposed to supply 3, COVID test, zip code, and biosex, and they only supplied COVID test. All right, so I know that was kind of a lot to quickly go through, but the point is they're going to send us a cumulative file, and there's going to be different NIH mandates that apply to portions of the file. This is what the NIH is telling us, and we currently don't have that information, so we can't know what's missing. So this is an effort for them to be able to fill out an a RADcap form that would tell us the missingness, and then for them to be able to tag it in that cumulative file per data point. The other change I'd point out is that currently in the Azure database, we bring in this RADcap form daily, but it overwrites and there's 1 row per project. But in this new system, there's a repeating form. And so whenever they change it, there would be a new row. So one project would have multiple rows in our Azure database, but they would be marked by which number they are, 1, 2, 3, or 4 here. Is it a request or an NIH mandate? What's the date? And have we marked it valid or invalid? All right, I'll probably end that recording here, but